Hi everyone, good morning to you. Thank you for tuning in. Before we start, here's a quick video on Alt HR, our channel, and once we're done with it, we'll jump straight into the webinar. See you soon.
Does your company have these problems? Meet Alt HR, the super app for companies. Alt HR is not your typical HR solution. To start, we designed and tested this with more than 1,500 DG employees. But it doesn't matter what your company size is, you can still use Alt HR. If you have existing HR policies, you can easily plug them into Alt HR. If not, let us help your company adopt the latest HR practices that we've tested with DG's HR team. Say goodbye to stacks of papers and complex spreadsheets. Say goodbye to manual works and hours spent on administrative tasks. With Alt HR, you can easily carry out HR processes with our clean and simple user interface. Easy for your employees, painless for your HR. Perform HR operations such as leave management, expense claims to new hire onboarding. Keep your employees happy and manage their well-being with case management, checklists, and highlights. If that's not enough, we have more. Be it to adapt to the new normal or to enable your teams to be more agile, you can check out our attendance and time tracking module. With Alt HR, clock in and clock out by just using a smartphone to have an even simpler digital management of all attendance data. Punch cards no longer needed. In services, your employees can purchase vouchers, pay their utility bills, mobile reloads, and other essential services from inside Alt HR itself. Have you heard of an HR app that does this? Your employees deserve the best. Let us help you with that.
All right, hi everyone. A very good morning. My name is Nahulin. I am the Customer Success Lead at DGX, and I will be your host for today's webinar. So of course, as per usual, if you've been here before we start, do fill up the form in the QR code at the top right-hand side of your screen, or visit the link in the description box below. This is just so that we can send you some additional material from the session itself. All right, so let's get started. Welcome. Thank you again for attending our 10th webinar in our Business Continuity Digitalization, or BCD series. So we've come up to the big 2 digits now. Today's webinar is, of course, organized in conjunction with MDEX 100 Go Digital program. And the BCD program, of course, is aimed at helping large and SMEs mitigate the impact of COVID-19 by leveraging on some digital opportunities that we've got out there. So, of course, this BCD webinar series is jointly hosted by our very own DGX and our digital solutions, Alt HR and Omni Hotline, as well as iFleet. Again, just a very quick introduction to DGX if you've not heard of us before. We are DG's venture builder arm, and our focus is to help Malaysian companies of all sizes to solve their issues by digitalizing their operations through our products, Alt HR, Omni, and iFleet. So I'll get straight into it today. We will feature 2 highly experienced speakers, both from Standard Chartered Bank itself, and we will be speaking mostly about today's topic, which is resilience in crisis and protecting employees' financial health, especially during these trying times. So without much further ado, allow me to introduce our speakers for today. First and foremost, we've got Samrat Sarkar. Samrat Sarkar is Regional Head of Employee Relations, India, ASEAN, and South Asia at Standard Chartered Bank, and a member of the ASA HR leadership team and the Global Employee Relations leadership team. Samrat brings 18 years of human resource management experience across FMCG, healthcare, and banking and financial services. He's based over in Mumbai, India, and he has rich exposure to employee relation management in the ASEAN and South Asia region. Prior to joining Standard Chartered Bank, Samrat has worked with large MNC across various industries, including Coca-Cola, Baxter, and even HSBC. Some of the areas of interest of personal professional interest for Samrat is change management, employee relations, and employment law. Our second speaker today will be Lai Pei Si. Lai Pei Si is the country head of retail banking for Standard Chartered Malaysia. She is responsible for building a sustainable retail franchise, optimizing market opportunities for targeted segments, and the implementation of the bank's digital services within retail banking itself. She has 20 years of experience across various roles in retail banking, strategy, product management, distribution, regulatory governance, and business optimization. She was also previously the CEO and head of retail clients for Standard Chartered over in Brunei. And Mrs. Lai, of course, holds a bachelor's honors degree in economics and political science from National University of Singapore. All right, so that's the introduction of the speakers. I will first now pass the floor over to Samrat. Samrat, good morning to you. Samrat will be walking through over with us on the main first part of the webinar today, which is resilience in crisis, and just seeing how employees can adapt more to the changes and how we can help. Samrat, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nahulan, and a very good morning to all of you. Thanks, firstly, for having me here, and it is indeed a privilege to be addressing this audience. So thanks for having me. So before I begin with the subject, I think one key learning from this experience of the pandemic and how Standard Chartered Bank responded to it, I think clearly comes out of the application which you just played out in the video, Nahulan, on Alt HR. And I think it goes without saying, and it's something which all of us are familiar with, that technology is the future. So whether it's business, whether it's operations, or whether it's about managing people, technology certainly is going to be at the center of how organizations grow and how organizations evolve. Having said that, let me first start with articulating why the pandemic and how the pandemic was a challenge for organizations like Standard Chartered Bank. So as you all know that we are a global corporation, we have a huge footprint in Asia as well as in the other parts of the world. Organizations in their journey would certainly have seen some sort of a crisis or some sort of a massive change in some stage of their evolution. What was unique to this pandemic was the scale and the fact that it impacted all of the globe at one point in time. Keeping that in mind, I would say that this was a challenge which was unprecedented, not only Standard Chartered Bank, but I think for most organizations, if not all, this was something which was of an unprecedented scale. And making matters more critical was the fact that this arrived without any notice whatsoever. It was therefore critical for organizations to think on their feet, for the leadership to demonstrate utmost agility in how quickly they are able to intercept and articulate what this would mean for the organization and what it would take to adapt and survive. As far as employees are concerned, and as far as people in our organization are concerned, it is now common for all organizations to have gauged some of the emotions which kind of prevailed in the workplace all through, which is emotions like stress, emotions like anxiety, loss of concentration, etc. So the challenge for us in Standard Chartered Bank was to ensure that in the context of this crisis, we ensure that our client services remain without any disruption whatsoever, and at the same time ensure that we are doing enough to sustain the well-being of our employees and support our employees in every possible way that we could. So this was the challenge that the pandemic threw at us at Standard Chartered Bank. Now, as I speak about how we responded as an organization, in the interest of time, I will limit myself to a couple of key initiatives or a couple of key aspects which was at the center of how we responded as an organization. So across markets, like for example, in the ASEAN and South Asia region, we have about 12 markets and a couple of representative offices. In this region itself, we have close to about 29,000 employees, and we have a large footprint in this region, as you can gauge. I will not talk about initiatives which were specific to markets because different markets did various things which was required to adapt to the change that was necessary in those markets. I will talk about a few thematic interventions that the organization undertook. And let me start with what is at the center of everything, and that is leadership. I think it was the leadership in the bank which was quick in terms of anticipating how this crisis would impact the bank, the challenges it would throw at us, which is what I just spoke about, which is ensuring that we retain our client focus, ensuring that we prevent any disruption in service, and at the same time, focus on our employees' well being. It also necessitated that we comply with various regulations and rules that various governments came out with in response to the crisis. Lockdowns have been common, and I think every market in the region has undergone some phase or the other of a lockdown. There were conditions which were put forth. For example, in various offices, branches of the bank, etc., we were under limitations that we could work with only about 10% or let's say maximum about 30% of our staff. At the same time, being an essential service, it was also necessary that we ensure that the banking services are not disrupted. That was also a condition that as an essential services we were expected to meet. So this was the challenge that the leadership was dealing with. And I think what I have seen in the bank is a tremendous amount of clarity of thinking in terms of what we need to do and how we need to do that, which is what I will be talking about in the next couple of minutes. And at the same time, the ability to demonstrate agility and adapt to these changes in a very quick and in a very efficient manner. So I think at the center of everything that we have done, I would place the leadership ability to think through the challenge and take steps at a very quick pace, which led to all the other actions that I will be speaking about. The second most critical thing in a situation like this was how do we ensure that when our staff are unable to come to our offices and branches, how do we ensure that our services and are up and running without any disruption? And no points for guessing, the answer lay in technology. So like Nahulan, you played the video on Alt HR about how we can support our employees in the changing times in a very agile and in a very efficient manner using technology. Uh, it was the same what the Standard Chartered Bank also leveraged technology to ensure that we have the necessary platforms and agile platforms which can bring our employees, our teams, and our clients together. Also, integrate them with our banking services and our technology platforms, which are used to drive operations in the bank. So while we had very, very skeletal staff, which was visiting our branches and offices to attend to clients and client needs, it was essentially a massive backbone of technology, which was running things in the background. We have traditionally been used to managing teams and people where the people leader works with the teams in their offices. We get to see each other, meet each other. But the pandemic completely took that away. So we had about 70, 80, or even 90% of our workforce, which was working remotely from home. We also have teams, for example, like my own team, which is located in different geographies, in different markets. In the office, you usually are frequently engaged in various calls, video conferences, etc., on the platforms that we were earlier using in the bank. But now people were working from home. Most of us were exploring flexible working. And this was where technology brought all of us together. So there were heavy investments that the bank made in terms of technology, ensuring that our employees had adequate infrastructure and tools so that they can efficiently work from home without any disruption. So we now have teams working from different locations, from different markets, but at the same time, there is no disruption in terms of engagement because people can still interact with each other, speak to each other as and when required, and they can process transactions sitting from the comfort of their home. The bank supported employees in terms of ensuring that we had all the technology, all the platforms that we required to enable us perform our duties from home without any disruption whatsoever. Moving on from technology, the bank did recognize, or I would say the management did recognize, the leadership did recognize that it was important at this point in time to focus on the well being of our employees. In fact, it was all the more paramount now because things were not the same as earlier. We now refer to it as the new normal. But when I go back to the months of, let's say, March or April this year, that was the time when all of us were in some form or the other struggling to adapt to this change. While today it seems very easy that we are working from home, I can tell you from my personal experience that when this all started, it was not very easy, I would say, to adapt to this new way of working, which is working from home day after day, week after week, and month after month. You do undergo anxiety, you do undergo stress. There are times when one feels that I'm losing concentration. And it was therefore all the more important that as an organization, as a leadership, we were engaged, we were connected with our employees. And that's what I think our people leaders have done very well, which is to ensure that they were throughout connected with their teams and they knew exactly what individuals were going through. And where we had any employee who was going through any form of stress or any form of anxiety, we ensured that we intervened at the right time and provided the employee with whatever support we could. When I talk about support, it could mean various things. It could even mean something as simple as encouraging employees to plan their leave and take some time out from work. While we had all of the organization working from home and from different geographies, different time zones, it also meant that work was never coming to an end. So you might start early in the morning, but your mails would continue to flow in the evening, late in the evening, at night, etc. So where we felt that our employees, members of our team, were sensing some sort of a burnout, people leaders in the organization encouraged our employees to take time out from work and spend time with family or spend some time in leisure just reviving and rejuvenating themselves. That was about employee well-being. The organization also has an employee assistance program, which came very handy and which I think our employees have leveraged very well. Uh, this is essentially a service that Standard Chartered Bank extends to its employees, where our employees can log into a helpline number or go into the website of our employee assistance program and seek professional advice and counsel from qualified professional counselors at no cost and at any time of the day or the night that they would wish to. We enable our employees to take counsel from professionals, whether it is about emotional issues, whether it is about mental well being, mental health. Employees can also take advice from professionals with respect to financial matters, legal matters, anything that they need advice on. So, where our people leaders were not in a position to professionally guide someone with any form of a stress that an employee was dealing with, we were able to leverage this employee assistance program, which is provided to Standard Chartered Bank by a third party that we partner with. Like I said, this service is provided to our employees 24 by 7, so it does not matter which time zone you are in. You can dial in anytime that you wish to seek professional advice. Moving on from that, we also felt that at this point in time, how do we ensure that our employees are engaged? How do we ensure that our employees are motivated to stay focused and to continue to perform the way they were doing earlier? And two specific examples that I can cite here are one where we encourage our people leaders and our employees to spend more time in conversations where feedback was exchanged. So we follow a principle of 360-degree feedback, and we encourage employees and people leaders to seek and to provide feedback. These conversations also capture the aspirations of our employees, how they want to grow in their career, what are the kind of roles that they would like to do in the near future, and at the same time, also consider feedback with respect to what the development needs of the employees could be to meet those aspirations. Now, this was very seamlessly integrated with the learning platform or the learning journey of an employee in the organization. We introduced something called Discover at Standard Chartered Bank. And this was essentially a platform which integrates learning modules from various different online sources, and it leverages artificial intelligence to recommend programs to you based on what your learning style is and based on what your learning needs are. We saw tremendous success in this program with a large number of employees who signed up for these programs and who actually took programs which will aid their career development and their career growth, or it will simply aid their understanding of subjects which are of interest to them. All of this sitting in the comfort of their homes, just leveraging the Standard Chartered Bank platforms. The other aspect that I would like to speak about with respect to employee engagement is what we call the talent marketplace. In simple terms, this is basically an internal and a virtual gig economy. So let's say I am a human resource practitioner, but I have an interest in some project that is being run in, let's say, the retail bank of the organization. But I'm not a retail banker. I am an HR professional. If I think that the project is of interest to me, and if I think that I have ideas and suggestions, I can virtually join the project team and work with the team, give ideas, make suggestions, make recommendations, and contribute to that project, which again in turn aids my development, my growth, and my understanding of business, or simply exploring an area that is of interest to me. So that was what we refer to as the talent marketplace. Last but not the least, I'll take a minute to talk about the assistance that we provided to employees who were in a state of crisis. So we've had employees who have seen either themselves or members of their families or their loved ones being infected by the coronavirus. The organization went out of its way to ensure that we provided all the support and emergency response to employees in terms of ensuring that they get the right hospitalization and the medical care that they require. While it sounds like a very administrative thing, but at the same time, I can tell you that particularly, for example, in markets like India, where the numbers have been surging since the month of March or April, it's not been easy for any individuals to actually get a bed in a hospital. It's quite a struggle. And that's where, as an organization, we set up emergency response teams, which was continuously tracking employees who were showing symptoms of infection. We were enabling them to get admissions in the right hospitals in the city. And at the same time, we were following procedures and protocols which we had laid down for contact tracing, I'm sorry, and ensuring that the workplace is absolutely safe, secure, and in a hygienic state for other employees to work in. So these were some of the initiatives that we took during this period of dealing with the pandemic. And before I conclude, I will just summarize what I think is the future of the workplace. So from all of these examples and from my involvement in a couple of these initiatives, what I see is that like we refer to the term very frequently these days called the new normal. My assessment is that this new normal is what is going to be the normal hereafter. It may not be the case that we will go back to the same old ways of working that used to be before we went into various lockdowns and before the pandemic struck us. Organizations of the future and the workplace of the future will have a strong foundation in technology. It may not be that teams are working physically together. We will leverage a lot on remote workplaces. We will leverage remote teams. Technology will continue to be at the center and will ensure that our teams are enabled, are empowered to deliver performance from wherever they are. It will also be critical for people leaders and for the leadership to ensure that we build capabilities in ourselves to balance our client needs, our business focus, and also continue to focus on employee well-being. That, I think, is what the future holds for us. And I think at the center of everything else lies our agility as an organization to continuously keep learning from the past and to keep ourselves prepared to adapt to various changes that we encounter going forward. So that's it from my end, Nahulan. With this, I will hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Samrat. I think you especially hit the nail when you're saying the new normal will actually be the normal moving forward. I think that's where we're all headed to. And also, just going back on a quick point that you mentioned, especially on, I think you broke it down to 3 pillars, almost on the importance that leadership actually plays in following the government rules and regulations during this time, then ensuring your clients are actually serviced as per normal, and making sure employees themselves are actually supported during this period, whether it's their well-being or being able to work from home or working remotely, all their tools are in place. So thank you very much, Samrat.
Thanks,
Okay,
Nahulan. Thank you very much.
great. I will invite our next speaker on, Pacey. Welcome. Good morning to you also. And Pacey will be speaking about protecting employees' financial health, especially in these times. Over to you, Pacey. Thank you.
Thank you, Nahulan. Thank you, Samrat. Good morning, I'm Pacey, actually from Standard Chartered Bank. Just a quick introduction of the bank and also actually myself. So Standard Chartered has been in Malaysia now for 145 years, so it's a long time. And we are what we call actually a universal bank. So we look after all individuals and across actually all segments, and across all segments actually within the corporate world, to the very small SMEs to the very large CLCs. I look after retail bank. So what that means is that all individuals that bank with us, and in this case will be personal banking clients, as well as all the way to private banking clients, along with small SMEs up to turnover 50 million. That's actually under my care. And in retail bank, we also have a very large number of staff. So I'm responsible actually for 1,500 staff actually in total. So I consider myself, while I'm a business person, I think I'm in the business of people. So that's why the topic around employees, around people, it's right up actually on alley on what we need to do and how do we respond in this time. So that's one. Two is that I like to also actually bring some of Samrat's story a little bit actually closer to home, actually to Malaysia, to see how it's actually panned out actually in Malaysia, actually vis-a-vis actually the market. Around 4 weeks ago, we brought together 20 HR professionals, and they came from all industries, the hospitality, the retail businesses, the manufacturing, obviously financial services, as well as just retail. And there were a lot of commonality actually in this period of time. And some of these learnings and these commonalities that we saw in Malaysia is that operating model has certainly changed. So we asked ourselves and we asked the HR professionals as we got together in your respective areas, your respective industry, do we have more employees wanting to work from home? Do we have more employees wanting to work in office? Or do we really actually have a mix of both, right? What clearly actually came out is that the employees and the staff through this period discovered that they can work from home, They can work in the office, but they prefer to be able to do both. So what they are telling us is that the Malaysian employees are telling us is that they would prefer to be able to have the flexibility to what we call it actually work from anywhere, right? Because the need for that structure actually at work, and certainly the need for that social interactions actually at the office, as well as the flexibility to be able to work at the office or actually at home at the time they want to do so, it's prized actually by employees. So as we ourselves, even as I think of my own business, how I'm going to be designing and curating actually for the next new normal, the next normal as Samrat will actually call it, is that it's probably going to be a flexibility of both, giving the opportunity for the employees to choose where they want to be, where it's actually most appropriate for them, but optimizing productivity. So that's actually the first common learning that we've had. The second common learning is that whilst we concentrated actually very early, post-crisis, to ensure that there is the physical well-being of our staff and employees are actually being taken care of. By physical well-being means that making sure that they are able to work from anywhere. Therefore, technology was important. Making sure that wherever they work from, whether it is a retail unit, because we do have to actually serve clients, it's safe for themselves as for the clients. It's safe when they go home actually to their family. So that's one, the physical well-being. But it quickly actually progressed into the mental well-being. So the HR professionals whom we spoke to, who we got together, we also surmised that a very big part of preparing for the future is not only preparing for us to enable everyone to have the right physical environment to work, to enable them to do so, but to also ensure that we take care of their mental well-being. The art and the skill of being able to balance off at home or anywhere actually versus today, making sure that we make the environment safe, making sure that we're able to manage this as our family also go through the same scenario at school or at their respective workplaces means that there is a certain amount of stress that we need to actually look after, certain amount of stress that we need to be empathetic to, which then actually leads to the third. We had a very healthy conversation, actually a discussion around what kind of leaders do we need at this moment? What type of company it should be, right? In this new environment, because what has previously been actually now in the movies has become real, right? What was always imagined has really actually become a realistic scenario. So what came up clearly, we had all agreed, was two specific values or two specific characteristics that you and I, as we manage and lead our teams into the new world, that we must demonstrate, we must be able to adopt, and we must help our line managers to be able to do so. Two words came out very strongly. One is empathy, to be able to appreciate how it is like and what it is like to be out there, to be actually able to serve the change. And the second is resilience, being empathetic and being resilient in any changing environment allows one to adapt, to be able to be agile, and to be able to change with times and to be able to respond. And that has become one of the, or two of the biggest characteristics that we want to build actually within the organizations. So that was the first three sets of learnings that I wanted to share with you actually today. And this came actually from the HR managers and professionals that we worked with 4 weeks ago. The second set of information I'd like to share with all of you is that times have changed, right? And I wear the financial health hat. The reality is this, because we've started actually surveying all our clients, and our clients are telling us this. 8 to 10% of them have lost their jobs. 20% of them have a drop in salary, and that's more than 25% of their salary. Another 30% of them have also dropped in salary, and that's less than 25%, and that's current. We asked these clients throughout actually April, and we asked again actually in July, and we asked again actually in August. And these numbers are progressively better, but it's staying. 10% lost their jobs, 20% have dropped salary of more than 25%, 30% of them actually have dropped in salary that's less than 25, that is a drop. That's income decline. And we ask again, how many of you will be able to pay for your liabilities, your lending, your obligations, right? And 35% of them say that their household income, and that includes their spouse, it will not be sufficient to meet their monthly installment in the next 6 months. These are quite important data points because it does tell us the well-being, the financial well-being of where our employees could be and would be or might be actually in the next couple of months. So it is very real that your employee or your employee spouse, right, who may be the breadwinner, actually their financial situation now is completely impacted, will be impacted and is strained actually during this period. So what do we do? And individual financial health can really be looked at in 3 ways. So first is lending and liabilities. That's something I think all of us are familiar with because we buy a house, we actually have a credit card, we take a personal loan actually for a renovation. And in a situation where 10% of people have lost their jobs and a good 50% of them to say that salary has actually reduced means that they may or may not be able to actually meet those obligations. The Malaysia government, since April, has actually mandated a 6-month moratorium. So what that means is just payment holiday, actually for everyone, actually for 6 months. And that's coming to an end in 15 days. Therefore, actually by 30th September, the expectation is actually for all your employees and all of us who's got obligations to start paying our monthly installments again. And for those who have actually lost their jobs, as requested actually by the government, the banks will have to do this. They will have to ensure that we'll be able to give them further relief time if they ask for it. And that's actually anything between 3 to 6 months. So that's the first. The second request that the bank has been asked to take, and the banks are actually taking those actions, is that if your employee or yourself have actually lost income and you're able to prove that you've actually lost the income, will be able to also reduce the monthly installment actually by the corresponding actually amount. So, so there is help that's given actually across those who need help actually with their financial obligations, but it is temporal. These packages actually run from anything from 3 to 6 months, and thereafter, depending on the situation at that point in time, the financial institutions may or may not be able to extend help further. So that's the first. The second set of financial needs that an employee would have is how do you protect yourself, right? Especially at the time where there are people actually losing jobs, there are people actually reducing income. What that means is that potentially a cover, like I get cover actually from my organization. In the event I lose my job actually in Standard Chartered, what that means is that I will not have the same cover actually across. When I say no same cover across means that myself and my family members will not necessarily be able to get the hospitalization benefits or insurance cover that I get today versus what it was actually before. So in this regard, protecting and having that protection for insurance for hospitalization becomes more and more important when times are a little bit uncertain. And we see it through, it is real, because over the last couple of months, we see actually ourselves, our clients who are able to afford it, who is a little bit more conscious. What they've been doing is that they have dug into the pocket, say, let me buy a little bit more cover for myself because I want to ensure that there is continuity. Or they want to actually up the cover in case they actually need some help if they do fall sick, right? Or something actually happens to them, right? So in this regard, we are seeing actually more and more people wanting to protect actually what they have and protect the future, more to protect their future by actually ensuring that there is some sort of financial tools to actually help them. The third is that how do you protect one's current assets? That was future assets. How do you protect today's current assets? If you are watching actually your fixed deposit rates, you realize that your fixed deposit rates is actually reduced by 1% this year. So and the rates are going actually lower and lower. This year we've already actually had 4 cuts. And potentially there could be the 5th actually towards the end of the year. So what that means is 1.25 to 1.5% returns will be knocked off your fixed deposit rates. Whilst it's actually very, very good actually for those who owes money, for those who's got extra cash, what that means is that the returns on your cash actually becomes less and less, and sometimes not even meeting inflation. So there is therefore also a need to then think about, how do I protect my wealth? How do I protect the existing wealth that I have so that it will not actually shrink further? There is therefore a lot of our clients today also looking for financial planning, looking for financial advice to make sure that they protect actually what they have today. Now, the other component is someone like me, whom work in Malaysia, but obligations are in Singapore. And I have children who will be going to one in Australia and one in UK. And I earn in ringgit, lending in Singapore dollars, paying education actually for in Australian dollars as well as pounds, means that how the fluctuation of my ringgit would make a lot of difference in the future expenses that I may have to pay to support my family. In this regard, where the foreign exchange is extremely volatile, the necessity to be able to plan for the future for your employees, right, will be extremely important, right? And they need to know that knowledge helps them to plan for the potential unknowns. That leads to, what do we do as organizations? I'm lucky because I actually work for the bank, so I have access, right, actually to information. So all of you whom are responsible actually for your employees, if you want to help them to hold their hand actually through these times, and it's very uncertain times, what are the options that you have? You can go to your banking partner. I think any one of us will be very happy to help to first educate your employees, to tell them what are the obligations they have and what are the options they do have in the event they have difficulty actually in it. How do they actually protect the future of their financial needs, and how do they protect today's current financial needs? And in some circumstances where I have run some bespoke program also, where because of the strength of the company, we then work to give the employees, whether is it more lending or actually better interest rate, to ensure that there is the benefit in being able to be working in the organization, because the strength of the organization is typically a lot stronger than the strength of the individual. So in this regard, being able to leverage off the organization to come up with a bespoke package actually for your employees, and especially if it's needed, and you know it if it's needed, because you are the one who pays actually for their salary every single month, right? You'll be able to work with your banking partner to actually do so. So in summary, I'd just like to leave you with 3 points that I've just covered. The world has changed, and it's changed quite dramatically. Whilst we look at physical well-being, we need to actually look at mental well-being. I think Samrat had actually covered that actually quite extensively. And this is recognized actually by all Malaysian employers as well. As managers, we do need to exercise new skills. How do we take care, and how do we ensure that productivity is being protected even in this environment? Because ultimately, we are all profit-making companies, and we need to make profits. How do we optimize actually the opportunity we have to make sure that happens? How do we ensure that there's actually no downtime? And how do we demonstrate as well as instill empathy as well as resilience actually amongst all our staff? So that's one. Second point is that the impact is already felt in Malaysia and is very real. A good 60% of our, at least the ones that we have gone out to, notwithstanding these, are probably our customers who's probably hit the most badly. 60% of them are saying that my salary has been cut off, I've lost my job. A good 35% of them says that I cannot pay. My household income is not sufficient, right, to pay for my next 6 months. So, and therefore, it is real. It is real. So that's the second point. The third point is that just like you, the banking institutions and the financial institutions, we bring certain kind of expertise, an expertise that you can use and leverage off from all of us. So go to your banking partner, come to Stanchart. If you need help, come to me. If you feel that you need us to help in educating actually your staff in understanding what are the financial solutions actually out there to manage actually through this quite difficult period, and we do not know how long. And that really actually that's it from me, and I will be happy, I think, with Samrat and Hulan to actually take any questions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pacey. I think you summarized it perfectly. About the same points that I took from your session as well. But I think, especially when you said it's real, and that really hit home. It's. I think people tend to forget that we've almost gone through 6 months of this already. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Pacey. All right, guys. We will head on to our Q&A session. Now, of course, with this, I'll invite Samrat also back into the fray of this. If you have any questions, of course, please feel free to post them in the live chat. We'll pause for about 10 minutes just to get you guys to write any questions while we prepare for the session, and then we'll take them as we go. Of course, with time permitting, we'll take as many as possible, but even so, we'll try to answer some of them within the chat itself. All right, let's just see some of the questions that are coming in. Okay, first one here from Sean Oi. For this new normal, what are the current methods would your organization track to get reports on engagement, productivity, and mental well-being? So I think this one I will put over to Samrat, if you'd like to take this one first.
Sure. Thanks, Naulan. That's from Sean. Thanks, Sean, for asking that question. Yeah, so I'll go back to what Pacey was mentioning earlier before I pointedly respond to your question. What we expect of people leaders today, in addition to the other skills and competencies that they bring to the workplace, empathy and resilience. These are two things that we would very strongly encourage all our people leaders to drive when they manage people. And that brings me to the point that the leadership skills, which we see as a need today, are more evolved than what might have been the need of the past, which is pre-pandemic. Now, coming to your question, what are the current methods would your organization track and get reports on engagements, productivity, and mental well-being? Okay. So I'll not focus so much on reports, but in terms of mechanisms of tracking engagement, productivity, and mental well-being, one most necessary is for people leaders to stay engaged with their people. And when I say engaged over here, it does not necessarily mean only formal engagement. It is also about how you connect with people one-on-one, personally, how often you connect with them, and what is the quality of that connect, right? So for example, if I'm dealing with my team, are all my conversations only of the nature of a task, which is that have you completed this, have you performed this, blah blah blah, or do I genuinely show interest in the well-being of my team, right? That's going to be one of the something that is going to be at the crux of it. How genuinely are we interested in our people when we look at engaging with our teams? That's one thing. Second, when you ask about productivity, going forward, when we measure performance, it's not necessarily going to be only conversations on what your targets were or what your objectives were and what you've achieved. The emphasis is that conversations between people leaders and employees are more of the nature of developmental conversations, right? So it is not only looking at what you have achieved so far, but also looking at how you achieved it and what contributed to your achievement or what may not have contributed to your achievement. So, what are the developmental needs of the individual and what are the growth goals of the individual? What does the team member really want to achieve in his career going forward, right? So, how do we motivate them to perform? How do we enable them to perform? That's going to be the crux. And last but not the least, mental well-being. I think Pacey also mentioned that this is going to be very critical, right? And this is not something that was spoken about very frequently in the past, but today, after the pandemic, this is certainly something which is as important as physical well-being. And for that, again, as a matter of practice, it is important that people leaders are engaged with their team members more at a personal level, demonstrating genuine interest in their well being and not just talking about performance and goals and achievements and so on. And if I were to just go back to what I mentioned earlier, we at Standard Chartered Bank have this employee assistance program. And where we think that an employee needs professional help, we would encourage our employees to go back and visit this employee assistance program, which is supported by one of our partners called ComPsych. Thanks, Sean. I hope I've answered your question.
Nahulan, could I add a couple of items? Yeah, okay. I think, Sean, for us, actually, practically speaking, there are probably three things to consider. The first is frequency. The second is actually quality, right? And the third is actually acceptance, I think. There's three things. So frequency, we do this quite often actually in organizations. So we tell folks, what you should do is get to the conversations often, right? And often, typically in our, because we're a very big organization, got 90,000 people, say you got to at least have the conversation twice in actually a year. That's what we say, at least, right? But the reality is that as you move, in this new normal, that twice in a year it's definitely not sufficient, and we know that. We know also some very good managers will say, I need to actually have a conversation every single week. But these are the good managers who understand, who's empathetic. But there are also plenty others who are probably less empathetic. So what we actually end up doing is that as a practice, we've started and we have now everybody in the organization goes into a weekly conversation actually with teams, in groups, right? And that actually helps in making sure that any issues get actually flagged out, which then actually leads to the second, exactly what Samrat has said around what do you talk about? Do you talk performance? Do you only talk about performance? Which we are a performance-driven organization, and because we love numbers, I love numbers, right? And and I tend to first talk about numbers because it excites me, right? But what I do try to do is I remember to take the first 5 minutes, and I do that, and I want to make sure that actually all my staff do that as well. Take the first 5 minutes to just ask how you are, right? And so we do everything actually from trying to structure a cocktail session, for example, because that becomes actually a conversation actually on business. So that's what we're trying to do actually around quality. So what I'm trying to demonstrate actually on the second point is and the first and the second point, is there is a certain amount of direction I think the talk will have to give. Because if we leave to everybody to do what they want to do, it may not come as natural because it's a learning process in these new times. And the third, I think, is acceptance. The staff assistant programs that we've actually been now talking about has been around for a long time. Yeah, but I think here the idea that first we broadcast actually a lot more, we talk about it a lot more. We say it's okay to actually say you are not all right. That is not easy. I think, especially I come from a very Asian environment and I come from a very Asian family, and the kind of acceptance is needed to be talked about actually a lot more to say that I'm not okay. And that's not easy to achieve. I think we are probably only very nascent stage at this moment to say that it's okay to actually talk about it. So the facilitation of something that's quite anonymous, that's what the bank has actually been able to give to the staff, is extremely useful because you not necessarily want to talk to your line manager, but you want to have an actual anonymous program. And if you don't have that, that's when you may need to facilitate something like that because it's extremely uncomfortable to tell somebody that you know that you are depressed, right? So that helps. So I think really, practically speaking, these are the three things and lots of programs that we do to encourage it because you need it to be structured.
Great, thank you. And also, I think coming back to your personal experience, where you also shared with us where you've got kids working over, studying or working overseas, and then you've got your obligations in different countries as well, in Singapore. These are all personal matters, really, that you don't see as an organization, say if you're up there, but
Yeah.
without having these conversations that you open up and understand the employee itself. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And the fact that if my organization knows about it and my line manager, and he does, helps me to say, how do I help you to actually make that happen? Actually, you build a very loyal. I've been in the bank for 21 years. So I think that helps, to be able to say that, yeah, you know your employee, and that helps.
Great, thank you. Okay, question number 2. This comes from David Tan. For such a large organization involving thousands, how do you ensure that each and every employee's well-being is taken care of? So I think, again, Pacey, back to you with this one.
First,
As you
okay.
mentioned, you're managing so many people, right?
Much bigger scope. Okay. I think, okay, first, like I said, I think the programs actually help. So we have very deep HR organization to help with engagement, to help with training, to help with engagement and everything else. But if you ask any HR individual, right, or any managers, any senior managers actually inside the Chartered Bank, where the responsibility of HR lies is actually me, is the staff. So we look upon HR as a partner, but it's actually we are accountable actually for it. So I don't know how to actually give I suppose a very structured answer to this, except that one, in a large organization, what we try to do is that we've got different programs to facilitate actually that structured engagement vertically and horizontally. That's what we actually do. And you cannot imagine, right, David? Actually, the many different programs that we run, from anything from training to well-being to even ask them to actually do some yoga exercises, right? Something fun, right? Volunteering programs, reskilling, right? We run the full gamut, both horizontally and vertically. So that's actually first. So in any big organization, structure is important. So we need to get that actually in place. Second will then be making sure that everybody owns it. That's where it's a lot more difficult because it's easy to put a program up there, but it's very hard to actually have it executed well and adopted. So that's when people like me will have to ensure that I cannot adopt because Samrat will roll like 20 programs. I'll say I cannot do 20. And I will not do 20. I will do 5, right? And I'll adopt that program and make sure that my team similarly adopts that program to actually get going. But I'll frankly ignore the other 15 because I cannot do so many, right? So that's the second. The third is that celebrating successes is important. Celebrating successes. So when we have things that it's working, in different patches, we're quite lucky because we're in so many markets. We'll always be able to find successes somewhere, right? And that celebrating successes actually gives many of us, I think, the drive to make it and work it. And last, I got one last point. Things that don't get measured do not get done. Truly. Okay, like I said, I love numbers. But truly, things that do not get measured do not get done. So we do actually have staff measurements that we actually get to. We use my voice surveys as an indication where it's actually going. We do dipstick survey to see actually how the staff is actually feeling. 360 actually feedback, because that helps in when you understand what the issues are, then you can actually fix it, and that helps. And frankly, the more anonymous the better, because nobody tells the truth, right? Unless they are not afraid that they won't actually be hit back actually with some sort of response. So four things I think for us. I'm Samrat, want to add anything?
Yeah, just a couple of things. When you look at well-being, well-being is an outcome of your personal as well as your professional circumstances. That's how I look at it. Uh, in as far as the professional circumstances are concerned, that's what we have a direct bearing on. Your work environment, how are things at the workplace, etc. That has a direct bearing on your well-being. Now, to address that, like Pacey said, I would say there are two aspects to it. One is the organization, which is the tools that we provide to enable people leaders, to enable employees. That's the platform. And the second, equally important, or I would say more important driver, is the people leader himself or herself, right? The organization can support you with all the right tools and all the right platforms, but how those platforms are leveraged and the employee is engaged is the part that the people leader plays. Now, continuous engagement with the employee, I think, is at the crux of it. And like Pacey mentioned, responding to the previous question, engagement on a day-to-day basis or on a frequent basis is critical for us to know that the employees are doing well, and not only about performance, but also in terms of how the employee is feeling at work. When you speak to an employee, you know exactly what the state of mind is, and so on and so forth. So two things: the platforms that the organization provides, that's from the HR side, you can say product development, and the other aspect is how the people leaders leverage those and ensure that we are looking at the employees well-being, and that's where that quotient of empathy and resilience comes in.
Thank you. Okay, uh, running a bit short on time. Let's quickly head on to the next two questions. Let's have it up here. Okay, this is from June JC. What should be the top one thing HR or leaders can play a role in protecting employees' financial health? Not all employees are financially savvy, especially during challenging times like this. So I think, again, Pacey, this is on your end of things at least.
I think avail the employees actually with information and expertise. That's why, June, if I could suggest, if you feel that actually your organization actually may need some information and maybe just some education sessions, every bank will be happy to do it. I'll be happy to do it. So we'll come by, right, to educate. Information is important, knowledge is important, and you and I can actually work with making sure that they attend, so making it a little bit more fun, or what lunch. So we do all these things, right, just to actually get people engaged. But yes, that's my suggestion.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Very quickly, again, we'll run quickly to the last question before we close off the session. From Justin. Okay. What happens after the moratorium? What can we expect? So I think this one I'll leave it as an open question to the both of you. Again, different markets, I'm guessing we're going through different things. Yeah.
Okay, I'll start first, right? Okay, the moratorium is ending on the 30th of September, and you all know it covers a payment holiday actually for all lending, for any consumers who's got actually lending obligations actually in Malaysia, right? So 30th of September, the expectation is everybody to actually start paying their monthly installments again. Now, the government has already, the regulator has already gone out to all financial institutions to say, if your client proves that he can do, has lost his job, or his income has actually reduced, the expectation is actually for the banks to be able to give them further moratorium for those that lost their job for 3 to 6 months. So no need to pay for another 3 to 6 months. And then all those who have actually salary has actually reduced by say X percentage, their monthly installment can reduce by the same X percentage. So that's the expectation on this group of consumers. Now, if there are actually other consumers saying, I still need help. I don't fall in any of these categories. I still need help. Then you go to your organization, the banking organization, and see whether you're able to actually get that help actually from them or not, right? And all banks, because we have vested interest to ensure that actually all our clients' financial health is healthy, they're able to afford to pay what they can afford to pay, right? Knowing the circumstances, every bank will actually try to help. This is what we will actually do. Just approach early. We've already had some clients since beginning of August coming back actually to the banks to say, hey, post 30 September, this is what I need, and we've been able to help, I think, I won't say everyone, but almost every single person that's been able to actually come to at least to us in the past 1.5 months. Yeah. I'll stop here. I think Samrat, you got something to add as well.
No, I don't have anything else to add, Pacey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. I think you answered it.
Thank you. All right. I think we've run a bit out of time here, but that's all we have time for today. Again, if you've got any other questions from the audience here, please feel free to still post it up in the live chat. We'll try and take them as we go through the live chat itself. And yeah, please feel free, of course, to email us at hello@althr.my. A very big thank you to both our speakers here today, Pacey, Samrat. Thank you. A very real session, brought everything back into perspective quite a fair bit. So thank you. We tend to forget these things again after so long in this new normal, right? Yeah, great. Thank you so much for the session. Thanks to everyone. And our next webinar will be coming up in the near future. So do stay tuned to our webinar page for more information, and we'll also send you the invite over. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy. See you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.